Ryan Reynolds here from Mint Mobile. I don't know if you knew this, but anyone can get the same premium wireless for $15 a month plan that I've been enjoying. It's not just for celebrities. So do like I did and have one of your assistants switch you to Mint Mobile today. I'm told it's super easy to do at mintmobile.com/switch.
Upfront payment of $45 for 3-month plan, equivalent to $15 per month required. Intro rate first 3 months only, then full price plan options available. Taxes and fees extra. See full terms at mintmobile.com.
Are your ad campaigns lighting up the dashboard, but not the pipeline? That's bullspend, and marketers are calling it out in Dashboard Confessions.
My boss asked for results, so I opened my dashboard for the only positive-sounding metric I had: impressions.
Cut the bull spend. See revenue, not just reach. LinkedIn delivers the highest return on ad spend of major ad networks. Advertise on LinkedIn. Spend $250 on your first campaign and get a $250 credit. Go to linkedin.com/campaign. Terms and conditions apply.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Tech Magic. I am your host, Cathy Hackl, and this is the podcast where we talk about AI, gaming, innovation, spatial computing, and everything in between. I am excited to be joined finally by my co-host, Lee Kebler. Lee, you're back from the wilderness. How'd it go?
Yes, I am. It's been like a month, I think, since you and I had a show together.
Yeah, it's been crazy.
Because you were traveling, so then Adam Davis and I did the show, and then I was traveling, and then I think, honestly, though, I think that is the first time I've missed a show.
Yes, it's true. Very true. It's the first time you actually missed a show.
Yes. And I wasn't planning on missing the show. I don't think I've ever been in a place, not in like the last 15 years, so remote where I had no connectivity. And, okay, so for the audience, this is how Cathy found out that I couldn't do the show that week. So I'm off grid. I don't know that I'm going to be off grid. We took a trip down to Big Sur, and for those familiar with the coast of California, the one which goes all the way down the coast of California, right after Big Sur, completely washed out. You don't know the story. This is the craziest thing. So I've got this camper van that we like to take everywhere, and we're trying to figure out how to get to our camp spot that is south of Big Sur. But the one completely washed out. The highway is gone. Yeah. Not there, not reopening. So we go to Google Maps, and Google says, oh, we found a reroute. We're looking at it, we're like, okay, yeah, sure, we'll take this. All of a sudden, we're going down this road, and this is where I'm like, Google should have done a better job of warning me. We're on a military base. I'm seeing, yes, that look.
Oh. Okay.
I am by myself.
I mean, I live really close to one, so
It's myself, my wife, and my little dog in a camper van on a one-lane road, and we hit a military base that, for whatever reason, waves us through. This is true. And then all of a sudden, I'm seeing signs warning us about tanks. Also true. And we end up on the windiest, most inclined road I've ever seen, going through the mountain to cut through to the other side. Now, the only person that I passed on this, what should have been a 20-minute drive, was an hour and a half, because you couldn't go more than maybe 10 miles an hour at top speed. And I passed a very confused person on a bicycle way up high. And that was it. There was no one here, because I think most people knew, like, you don't take this route. Yeah, that's how we ended up on the other side of Big Sur. And then we hit no cell phone service, nothing. I've got a huge cell phone booster. I've never not been connected. We had nothing.
Nothing. Okay.
My wife does have the new iPhone. She thankfully had the satellite feature turned on.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And no one else had the satellite feature turned on. I don't know if it was because you might have been out of the country, or like what was going on. We couldn't reach.
Yeah, I was in Japan.
Yeah, you were in Japan.
I don't know. I remember. I just remember.
Yeah. So the only person we could get a hold of was Adam Davis, who fills in on the show sometime. For whatever reason, his satellite system was working on his iPhone, and we got him one message, and then he had to message so many people to be like, they're just so off the grid. They're alive. Don't worry.
Well, yeah, it was so funny, because I was like, oh, okay, Adam, thanks for the 411. I mean, that's my thing. I kept thinking, well, Lee had some bandwidth to message Adam. So why did he message Adam and not me? But now I know.
Yeah. It was thankfully because of Apple's new satellite feature. We were able to eke out one tiny little message, and then he had to like telephone tag and relay to everybody. And then we just didn't have any service for like the next 4 days, which ended up being very nice. I got a lot of reading done.
It was really nice, really cool.
It was cool.
Yes.
It was cool. We saw whales. We went whale watching, not like on a boat or anything, just like there on the coast watching mom and baby whale somewhere around. It was fantastic. So no, we had a really good time. But that's where I was. How was Japan? You were in Japan.
Japan was amazing. Oh my gosh, Lee, you have to go. That Nintendo store, just that for you.
Just that alone.
Just that alone for you.
Yeah.
I had a fantastic time. So I was invited there by the folks at the World Expo, the Japan side of it. Well, it's based in Japan. Like this year's expo is in Japan. They invited me to be part of something called Theme Weeks. It's something new for the expo. It's not just installations and pavilions. Now they're doing more content. So I was on a fantastic panel with Professor Miyake, who's an AI and gaming researcher in Japan. He's done a lot of AI for Square Enix, for example, for Final Fantasy. I was also on the panel with the head of X in Japan. So X, former Twitter, is actually the biggest social network in Japan, which is really interesting. Then the VP of Games at Niantic. Obviously, they're moving more into geospatial AI, so I had some fantastic conversations with him. And there was also an amazing Professor Mio, who is out of like a health-focused university in Tokyo. So it was an amazing experience. I will tell you this. The day before my panel, they did something called a visionary exchange, where they invited a lot of these high-profile speakers to do this visionary exchange. And I got to spend quality time talking to Professor Ishiguro, who is a world-known roboticist. So if people might know him, he has a humanoid robot of himself. A lot of people recognize him. So we're at the hotel. I get on this little bus to go to the visionary exchange at the expo. I get on and I see him sitting there. And I'm like, okay, this is a chance I'm never going to get. I am sitting next to him all the way there. So I had great conversations with him about the work he's been doing for years in robotics. The concept and the idea of not soul, that's not the word soul, but the idea that not sentience either. It's more the concept of robotics and why in Japan it is something that's been very accepted culturally for a very long time.
Yeah. You even sent me like a photo or video of you at a hotel and people checking you in were not people. They were robots.
We're not people. We're humanoid robots. So I had a great conversation with him about that. And he had a pavilion that he curated himself called The Future of Life. It was all robotics. I mean, the biggest collection of humanoid robots I've ever been around. That says a lot. I've been around a lot of humanoid robots myself. So,
It's just like the Hall of Presidents from Disney World over there.
This was amazing. I'm going to be posting more on LinkedIn. It was an amazing experience. And then, just getting kind of like further into that concept of moving from generative AI to agentic AI to now physical AI, everything was really interesting. It was an amazing experience. So kudos to the folks at the World Expo and the Theme Weeks team. And I fell in love with Japan. Spent time in more Koyasan, which is more of a religious area, but then also went to Tokyo. And I think Tokyo, you would die.
Oh,
die in a good way. You would die in a good way. Like, it was amazing.
It's on my list of places that I want to go. I've never been to Japan. I've traveled a lot in my life, but Japan has always been one of those places I've not made it to. I was very excited in 2019 when I was working with Intel. We were working for the Olympics doing the VR production for Japan, and I was supposed to be at the Olympics in Japan in 2020. And then COVID just came in and then became 2021 Olympics. And I didn't get to go. None of us got to go. And I feel like that was my ticket to actually go and spend a good amount of time in Japan and go visit Tokyo, and didn't get to do it. So I got to come up with a new reason to go out there, because honestly, a lot of my favorite brands are out of Japan, out of Tokyo.
It was amazing. I'll tell you. So I did a photo shoot in the Shibuya crossing. So Shibuya crossing is the world's busiest crossing. That photo shoot was a hoot. It was so much fun. We walked all over. We did shopping. Gaming-wise, I did so much gaming fun things. There's Gilgo, which are these giant arcades of sorts with the gacha machines. And then actual arcades. It was like an arcade that I've seen in the US, but times just on steroids.
Yeah, everything over there just looks absolutely incredible.
Everything.
Yeah.
And I even made, so this is funny. I know we're going to get into the news, but I'll just share this. I even made, because I went with my friend, she came as my assistant. She did do the work as an assistant, so she was my assistant during the trip, but she's my friend. And I made her go into what's called a maid cafe. I don't know if you know what those are.
No.
So we're walking around the gaming tech area, and there's all these cafes with Japanese young women dressed as maids, right?
Oh, okay. MAID. Okay. Okay.
Yes.
So, I don't know what you're talking about.
Oh, yeah. They're called maid cafes. And I've always been curious about going into one, but normally you can't do video in them. So I found one where we could. My friend's just like, what are we doing here? What is this? And it was so funny. It was such a funny experience because basically, it's a play on anime, but also there's a little bit of an edge there on what they're doing. It's super funny and weird. But yeah, basically, like they do a live show. Like it's crazy. It is crazy. And the way you called, at least in the cafe we went to, the way you called the waitress over was saying meow meow.
Oh my. Okay.
Meow, meow. So I was like, oh, I made a woman meow today. It was so funny. It was hilarious. My friend was laughing. And our tour guide, a 7-year-old Japanese man, was having the time of his life. He had never been to a maid cafe. But this is like a decent, like not a crazy one. This was like really, really funny. But it was so Japanese anime.
You found every corner of culture.
I went down some rabbit holes. Let me tell you. I went into Don Quixote, which is their giant, like, one of the stores where you can buy anything and everything. And when I say that, I really mean it. Yeah, I went down some crazy rabbit holes. But yeah, I'll share more later. It was a mix of old cultural temples. Like I spent time like meditating and then doing crazy stuff in Tokyo. It was fantastic.
And now you're back.
And now I'm back. And I went to a hotel with the robots, the humanoid robots. They used to actually be dinosaurs, but now they replaced them with humanoid female robots.
Okay. Yeah. Because that's what you do. You start with dinosaurs and you move to female robots. Like that makes
exactly.
that makes sense. Right? Totally makes sense.
Makes sense in Japan. But
those are things that I just don't know, like culturally. I often wonder if in the US we're not so like tethered to our phone that like the idea of a humanoid robot just seems like an unnecessary step. If I were to implement no human contact into a hotel, I feel like it's almost kind of like the McDonald's kiosks that they're putting in now, right? Is it necessary to go full robot in the US, or is that off-putting to our culture? I don't know. I don't have an answer. It's just kind of what's in the back of my head of like, I find it interesting that Japan leans towards robotics. And I feel like the US would probably lean more towards just voice command or touch screen because that is how we live so much of our life now.
I'll tell you why. It is cultural because to them, culturally, from a religious standpoint, not religious, but maybe a spiritual standpoint, there are inanimate objects that have assigned some characteristic of soul. Let's call it soul. It's not the word soul, right?
Persona.
But for example, a Buddhist statue or like a puppet or like culturally, I think they view these things differently. So it's just that in the form of a humanoid robot, right? So I think I also think that culturally as a country, they are aging very fast. And they understand that robotics will be helpful. So it was interesting to me because it was less of the Terminator view that we tend to have maybe sometimes here in the Western world. Right. And more of like an acceptance of robotics in a level, in a way that made sense to me being there and understanding culturally how they see things. So I think part of it is that.
I do wonder when that changed for the US because I remember especially like in the 80s, and we're talking about when animatronics really started hitting a high note at like Disney World and Universal Studios. And then you had Chuck E. Cheese with the animatronic band in the background. And there was kind of this resurgence of interest in robotics in like the 80s and 90s. And then it just kind of went away. And now we don't really have that as much anymore. So I don't know. That's just an interesting turning point. But I definitely want to go. Okay, before we dive into the news, I do want to bring up one little like thought that has crossed my mind.
Okay.
And I've actually been talking to Adam about this and anyone who will listen. I think YouTube and AI is becoming a real legitimate issue. And I didn't notice it until the Diddy case. I didn't see it.
Wait.
Okay,
why? Like, I'm not following the Diddy case on YouTube. I'm reading New York Times, but okay.
Right. Just forget about the case for a second.
Okay, let's forget about the case.
Yeah, we're not here to talk about the Diddy case.
This is not that.
That's not. No, that's not.
Yeah, no.
But because it is one of the subjects that is constantly being talked about on YouTube by YouTubers, and because there are no photographs inside of the courtroom right now, the amount of IA slop images that is hitting YouTube right now in YouTube videos being created by algorithms, I see it. I finally see it. This is the turning point for me where I go on, I look at YouTube and go, oh, we're about to fall off a cliff. Again, this has nothing to do with the actual legal case or Puff Daddy or anything that's currently happening in the news with that. It's just the situation of the story itself and the lack of access to images from it happening has started proving what I think a lot of people have been really concerned about, and that is generative AI flooding the creative or informational market just to generate interest. And oh my gosh, you can't escape it. And it's so bad. It is so bad.
I need to go and look at that. Like, I haven't
Yes.
even because I guess I'm not looking for that on YouTube, but I could understand why the algorithm why AI would want to create these sorts of things to give the algorithm
it's generating interest, right?
And it's perfect storm, right? There's no images. It's a sketch artist or generative AI.
Exactly. It's generating images. It's generating content that may or may not actually be what's happening at the case. I've definitely found instances where this video is talking about something that didn't actually happen. I don't know where it's pulling this from, but it's generating interest because it seems so outlandish and no one's stopping it. So we're spiraling. You can go back to like from 2015 era all the way to like 2024 and say we had a big era of disinformation, right?
Yeah.
Fake news and all of this comes up to become a real problem. But that disinformation was at least created by a person.
Mm-hmm.
Now we're facing a whole new battlefield where I think we're going to have a real issue with disinformation that's just generated by machines to generate clicks and interest for advertisement. And I am definitely folding a tinfoil hat right now. I know I am, but it just is so glaring.
Oh my gosh. Okay. All right. To that point, I will say, I'll add this to your thought. There's a TV show, I think it's a movie or a show, I'm not sure yet. I think it's a movie coming to HBO called Mountainhead. And I sent you a link. You didn't get a chance to see it.
I saw the text come in. You just sent it to me, though, so I have not a chance to look at it.
Yeah. It's okay. So if anyone likes Succession, which I was a huge fan, Succession was a masterpiece. This is from the same creator, and it's a movie. I believe it's a movie about, I think it's 4 or 5 of the top. It's a movie, right? It's a fiction, people. Let's say in that world's, the top 5 billionaires or whatever of that world or that earth get together on top of a ski mountain in Utah called Mountainhead. And there's all this stuff that breaks loose, and it's related to AI and an algorithm. So, I mean, I don't know. Things could get really nasty and bad. Hopefully not.
Yeah. Speculative fiction, as someone who's currently writing.
Yes.
It is a huge genre that is bubbling up because I think we all see it. We all see all the pieces of interesting dystopian stories falling in different directions. And we just don't know how the Tetris pieces are going to like fit together, right?
Yeah.
And it's happening quite a bit. I did a lot of reading on this last trip, and it's funny. I'm seeing the patterns of like how people are writing, how they're turning into TV shows, how we're seeing this in our media. But a lot of it is just falling into this term speculative fiction because it could happen.
I would say speculative fiction is one way people are trying to make sense of it.
Yes.
Another way people are escaping is romantasy. So like the amount of people that are reading, like especially women, I'm not saying it's only women, but like romantasy, like it's insane. The way that has exploded, it is crazy. And I've just got started into like getting into it and reading it and trying to make sense of why people want to read that. So yeah, it's been interesting. So I guess, these two are having a moment of wanting to make sense of the uncertainty, but also trying to escape it.
Yeah, it's really going to be, I think, a lot of people are worried about like content creation coming from AI and things like that in the next couple of years. I think we've got a little while of like the human brain still working here. We're going to see some really good content. But I also kind of get a little worried that a lot of content's going to get a little repetitive because I think we're all thinking about it. So we'll definitely have to see how that plays out. Oh my gosh, the news. We've been off for a couple of weeks, and I'm just going to let the listeners know right now, it's not all AI, but holy cow, a lot of it is AI.
Yeah.
A lot of it is AI.
Most of it is AI, right? Let's be honest.
And a lot of it is just like, what the heck is happening? I wish that's pretty much the show for the next 20 minutes. It's like, what is happening?
What is happening? Non-speculative fiction, because it's...
So I want to start off with the 2 I told you so's, okay? So I've got 2 I told you so's, we told you so's.
Yeah.
Cathy and I have said this over and over again to a lot of our listeners come from the enterprise market. There's a lot of people who are directors, even CEOs, who listen to this show to try to figure out what's currently happening, what does it actually mean for business and marketing, advertising, things like that, and how do I make it applicable to my company? We love you listeners. And if you've been listening for the last couple of months, Cathy and I have been beating this drum saying, do not replace your staff with AI. You can utilize and leverage AI to make your staff stronger. But if you have fallen under to this like foolish misconception that AI is going to cut your budget by you removing your employees, I now implore you to go talk to the CEO of Duolingo or anyone who's at the head of Klarna right now, because those are two major companies who have made these predictions that AI was going to come in and revolutionize their system. And they are finding out that it's a helpful tool, but it is still just a tool. There was a huge valuation drop for Klarna. Now they're reconsidering AI, which is a fintech company, if you don't know. Yeah. They previously replaced 700 customer service employees with AI. Please don't do that.
What could go wrong? What could go wrong if these things hallucinate?
Yes. And they found exactly what I thought they would find, and that is created a significant decline in customer service and quality. And now their valuation has dropped $40 billion. This is just not the right approach. I understand why they made the decision.
Yeah. The shareholders were very happy when they did. Now that they're not very happy.
Not so much. Duolingo has a really similar situation. They show their AI capabilities, chatbots, and things like that they had put in place. But after they've kind of put it in place, it's starting to raise questions about the role of AI, how they communicate. Now you're talking to chatbots. Are you going to be relying on that? Can you, in all actuality, relinquish control of an AI chatbot and accept the liability that will create? Because you can fire an employee who goes outside of bounds and does something crazy, and then all of a sudden the company's like, we're sorry about
fire someone with cause.
But you can't fire an AI with cause because it's just the machine. So who is liable when that machine goes off the rails? That's what we've been saying. This is what we've been saying.
I think it needs to be a measured approach. I feel like there's such a race towards replacing friction, like what my friend Andrews calls friction within the companies. And friction are people. Like people is friction, the friction is that. And all these companies are speeding to replace humans with AI when the AI isn't good enough, isn't really there yet.
Right.
And then without really thinking through, okay, how could this backfire? So maybe instead of those approaches of firing 700 people, you could have done a lot less strategically.
Yes. Well, let's give an example of where it's been done well. This comes from another article, right? So Amazon has a huge, robust customer service base. I've had to call Amazon customer service before. You can actually get an Amazon customer service person on the telephone.
A human. Ooh.
Really easily. It's not that hard. Amazon owns Audible. And they've said, okay, we're going to start looking at AI voices for audiobook narration. Now, I have friends who are voiceover actors that read books for a living. I'm sorry. This probably is going to replace your job. Yeah. I would rather it not, but I have to tell the news the way it is, right? This is something you and I both talked about.
Yeah.
And this is a controlled environment where an AI is leveraged, and some very good things can come from this. Imagine consistency in voice quality across multiple languages. I've had audiobooks where I've heard it in English and then I've heard it in Spanish, and it's almost jarring how different the voice is.
Yeah.
There's a lot of this. I mean, just the capability of including more voices, selecting the voice you want to narrate to you, and selecting multiple languages that you normally couldn't get localization for. While this is a very good example of where people will lose a job, this is also a really good example of Amazon saying, actually, this does make sense.
This makes sense. This makes sense, right? It gives more people access to the books in different languages. And as an author, like I remember, especially when we did self-publishing, like that's all on you.
Yeah.
If you're publishing with a publisher, then like they take care of the audiobook. You don't have to worry about that.
Yeah.
But when it was us, like we had to pay for that. We had to do that. And I'm like, oh, wow. Now, if someone self-publishes, which a lot of people do on Amazon, you can actually use this. And yeah, I'm sure that you'll have to pay a little bit, but not as much as you normally would. And you might be able to say, hey, I want it in Chinese, and I want it in Japanese, and I want it in all these other languages.
I have my voice print saved, like on my own machine. I just did that for my own peace of mind. And if I ever do have to do an audiobook for something that I've written, I'll probably lean towards that because it's a lot less work for me. It's still my voice.
And sitting there for hours reading it, right?
Right.
So,
right.
Yeah. Yeah, I've never really narrated any of my books that have audiobooks. It's always been someone else. But yeah, when you're in the studio doing that, that takes days, a lot of days recording it.
Yeah. All right. So the big news.
Dun, dun, dun.
To me, this is like the biggest AI news, and like nobody's talking about it. Johnny Ive. I've always say Ivy.
Yeah.
Is it Ive?
Johnny Ive. Yeah.
I've always said Ivy. Okay. Well, now I know.
Okay, now you know.
And Sam Altman. I got that one right.
Yes. Yes, because everyone knows how to say that one. But yeah.
Yeah, that's the one everyone knows how to say. It looks like they're partnering.
Yeah. Literally, OpenAI has acquired Johnny Ive's startup. EO? I don't know. It was at the same week Google I/O happened. So I'm like, is it EO? Is it I/O? Like, I don't know. I don't know how to call it.
6.5 bill.
Which, in my mind, is insane valuation for already even getting. I mean, they're getting Johnny Ive and they're getting whatever he's creating with his team.
It is a device, supposedly hardware. This is as little as
They've
we know.
seen something, but like, I don't know. Having come from a company like Magic Leap, which is hardware,
right?
I'm like, what's the valuation there? 6.5. I mean, crazy. Yeah. That's crazy.
What was promised? What's going to be given? Who's really paying for it? Like, there's
really paying for this? Like
questions here. Those are two names that I remember when I sent you this article. I was like, this is either great or we're all in trouble. Those are the two biggest names.
I feel like people are leaning into positive. Like what I've seen, because some people are talking about it. Like I feel like people would tend to be leaning into positive because people are really big fans of Johnny Ive. And when he did at Apple, they're fanboys, right? So are fangirls. So I feel like there is that positivity. What I've been telling people, because someone's like, well, I mean, the hardware, and I've written this. You remember when I wrote about OpenAI's trademarks? I wrote at World Economic Forum about the next place AI goes is hardware, right? Mm-hmm. In order to move from generative AI into agentic and agentic eventually actually being in the physical world, you need hardware, different types of hardware. So we'll have to see. Who knows what they're going to build? But Sam has been talking about this for years. The first time I heard him talk about hardware was back in 2023, actually the day we recorded our first podcast episode, which is interesting.
Really?
Yes. I was at the Wall Street Journal Tech Live in Laguna. And it was that same day because the CEO of Roblox was speaking. Anyway, he spoke later that night and he talked about like the future of the smartphone. He talked about their ambitions for eventually doing something. And I mean, I still have the video and I was like, okay, that's a huge signal. He's going to go into this space. Mm-hmm. Hardware is the next mode and what I've been saying for a while.
Well, and that's exactly what Apple's like been attaching themselves to. There's been announcements they're planning on like brain-computer interfaces. Mm-hmm. That, I mean, of course, we're talking about Apple here, so we're talking 2055 at this point. They announce things, and it takes a very long time for those to come into play. And they're not the only ones talking about brain-computer interfaces. Really, one that caught me off guard was Valve's CEO.
Yes, tell folks about that announcement because that was interesting.
So Gabe Newell, who is the CEO of Valve, if you don't know what Valve is, they created Steam OS, which is the largest gaming platform for PCs, Linux, and Mac OS computers. They really kind of own the indie distribution network. But he is working on a brain-computer interface startup, and he is unveiling his first chip. This is called Starfish Neuroscience, and the first brain-computer interface chip that looks like it's going to compete with Elon Musk's approach to the same kind of concept. The chip aims to record and simulate brain activity with potential applications in gaming, medical therapy, positioning itself as a competitor for that Neuralink. We don't really know a whole lot more about this. I was really taken back that it was Gabe who was doing this. That was not a name I was expecting.
Not in that space specifically.
Right.
Like, that was like, oh, wow. When you sent me that, I was like, wow, Gabe's doing this. I love it, though. I love it for him. It's interesting. I was expecting him to do something different, but, you know.
And honestly, what's hopeful for me is that Neuralink needs competition, especially this kind of technology demands competition. Otherwise, it can get real dark real fast.
Real fast.
So any type of more competition, if we have to go into brain-computer interface technology, if that's a direction humanity must turn, as much competition as possible, because we really don't want to be reliant on single entities in something, I feel like, that invasive into humanity.
Amazing.
Anyways,
why don't we go on a break? And when we get back, we'll continue with more news. We also have a guest. We have a guest interview with my friend Dina Fierro, who is one of the most brilliant minds in the future of retail for beauty and fashion. She's worked with Nars and Shiseido, doing everything from gaming, AI, Web3. Brilliant woman. So we'll have her right after the break.
Are your ad campaigns lighting up the dashboard, but not the pipeline? That's bullspend, and marketers are calling it out in Dashboard Confessions.
My boss asked for results, so I opened my dashboard for the only positive-sounding metric I had: impressions.
Cut the bull spend. See revenue, not just reach. LinkedIn delivers the highest return on ad spend of major ad networks. Advertise on LinkedIn. Spend $250 on your first campaign and get a $250 credit. Go to linkedin.com/campaign. Terms and conditions apply.
This message is brought to you by Warner Brothers Discovery Advertising. And this is more than an ad. This is an invitation to be part of the stories the world can't stop watching, to connect with moments that dominate the conversation, to participate in culture, not just advertise around it. With the most sought-after IP, passionate audiences, and an advanced AI-powered foundation, WBD advertising transforms attention into influence and impressions into outcomes. This is innovation. This is impact. This is opportunity. This is Warner Brothers Discovery Advertising. Visit advertising.wbd.com to learn more.
Ryan Reynolds here from Mint Mobile with a message for everyone paying big wireless way too much. Please, for the love of everything good in this world, stop. With Mint, you can get premium wireless for just $15 a month. Of course, if you enjoy overpaying, no judgments, but that's weird. Okay, one judgment. Anyway, give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch.
Upfront payment of $45 for 3-month plan, equivalent to $15 per month required. Intro rate first 3 months only, then full price plan options available. Taxes and fees extra. See full terms at mintmobile.com.
Hey, everyone. So my guest today is the amazing Dina Fierro, who I know. I've known her for years. I actually got a chance to work with her when she was one of the big beauty brands. She's going to tell us more about that. We're going to be talking about all things commerce, technology. I mean, Dina has been at the forefront of a lot of the activations in gaming and like new types of commerce and next-gen consumer. So Dina, welcome to the pod.
Cathy, thank you for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
Me too. For folks that might not have come across who you are, can you let them know who you are, what you've done, and what you're doing?
Of course. So, hi, everyone. I'm Dina Fierro. I'm currently an advisor and a fractional marketing leader. I was most recently with Shiseido in a regional leadership role where I oversaw emerging technology and platforms, kind of consumer-facing marketing initiatives that leveraged technology. And prior to that, I was in a digital leadership role at NARS Cosmetics, where I oversaw not only many of the kind of fundamental components of digital, including media, content, social, and creator, but I also worked on some really exciting kind of bleeding edge projects there as well, which Cathy kind of alluded to.
Yeah, I remember we did some really cool projects together. So I am thrilled to have you here. And I'll give people a frame of reference why I invited you on the pod. There was some news that came out about Roblox implementing real world commerce on the platform. It's something you and I had talked about for years. Literally, I feel like it's been years. And I reached out to you and I was like, oh my gosh, this is happening. Or like, we need to have you on the pod. So given the announcements that Roblox is doing real world commerce, enabling that, I believe it's to Shopify now. Like, I'm not very clear on all the details, but there's real world commerce happening. There's also lots of news coming from the AI side. But let's start a little bit with that, because one of the terms that you've used with me is talking about distributed commerce. And what is distributed commerce? What does this mean in the context of the gaming opportunity of doing real world commerce? And then we'll definitely talk about AI. But let's start with distributed commerce. How do you define that?
Yeah, let me frame that for you a little bit. So I think over the past few years, we've really seen fundamental shifts in the quote unquote consumer journey in fashion and beauty. So there's really been an evolution from these highly controlled brand owned environments and retail channels to what I like to think of as fully distributed commerce. And what that means is that we've seen the rise in importance of marketplaces like Amazon, which, by the way, had to work for years to earn the trust, for example, of the beauty industry. We've seen the rise of platforms like TikTok, obviously, not to mention Instagram, which was once thought of only as a platform for discovery. But the reality is that those social ecosystems are now full-fledged conversion channels. And so distributed commerce is really thinking more holistically about all of the touch points in which a consumer encounters your brand, considers your brand, and ultimately converts.
And that's interesting because I find myself personally, I didn't used to shop as much on Instagram, but I buy a lot of makeup on Instagram now. Like, I feel like that's like my main place where I find makeup or new things that I want to try. So that's been a change for me, I would say, over the last year and a half. And then that's on a personal level. But then I see my kids and they're buying all these things. Like, their consumption is mostly virtual. And if it is physical, it's tied to something that might be related to gaming or there's like a virtual element to that. Not everything, but I would say most of it. But like with Minecraft, for example, the Minecraft movie and all that craziness, they're like, oh, we want the popcorn bucket. We want this. All related to Minecraft, which is their favorite go-to game right now. They're still playing Roblox, but I think it's kind of like ebbing and flowing. But it's interesting for me to watch that in my household, kind of like how our shopping patterns are changing. So you've worked across some of the most digitally forward fashion and beauty brands over the course of your career. How are you seeing, this category of distributed commerce changing? Especially, we talked about social, but let's talk about Roblox, for example. Roblox, maybe not so much Fortnite because that doesn't really have real world commerce, but Roblox right now that has implemented real world commerce and the things that you've seen with those shopping patterns.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a really interesting question. For me, when you kind of zoom out, platforms like Roblox really represent in many ways the next generation of social media and also the next generation of distributed commerce, especially when we think about obviously Gen Alpha, but also younger Gen Z audiences. Roblox, for example, for years has been kind of aging up to a certain degree. And these are spaces where identity, play, and community really intersect in very meaningful ways. So it's long been my belief that kind of the brands that show up there in a relevant way and with respect for the audience will really gain mind share in the long term. And so I think that was once kind of the case for Roblox. But the reality at the same time is that now with the launch of real world commerce through this Shopify partnership, and I know Fenty Beauty, for example, is the pilot partner for that in a very compelling activation. I think we're really seeing platforms like Roblox kind of try to bridge that gap and also, I think, prove their long-term ROI to these brands that have been investing on platform. So it'll be really interesting, I think, to see the performance of these pilots and also how commerce kind of scales in the coming months and years on Roblox.
And that's really interesting that you mentioned because I feel like they're all understanding that Roblox is a thing they need to like look at, and more brands do, but there's still some resistance, which baffles me at times when I'm like, okay, why aren't we taking Roblox as important as some of the other platforms? That still baffles me to this day. But let's talk a little bit about AI because I feel like AI is what most people out there are interested in focusing on. You've been experimenting with AI for years. I think that you've been one of those pioneers in the beauty and fashion industry thinking about AI from a very long time. So maybe tell folks a little bit about that. But I also want to talk about how AI is disrupting the path to purchase in fashion and beauty. There's been a lot of announcements, but I do believe that you've definitely been a pioneer in that space, in my perspective.
I mean, this is a space I'm really passionate about. And it was actually the focus, I would say, of not only a lot of the consulting work that I've been doing in the past 6 months, but also a primary focus for much of the work that I did at Shiseido in 2024. And I think the reality is that it's impossible to talk about the future of online shopping without talking about AI. It's already reshaping the path to purchase, especially when it comes to discovery and consideration. And I think one of the interesting things to me is really how we're seeing this transition from, for example, keyword-driven search towards something that's ultimately far more intuitive, multimodal, conversational, contextual searches. And we have platforms like ChatGPT or Perplexity or even platforms still in beta like Daydream that are changing not only how consumers ask questions and search for products, but also the kinds of results that they expect, frankly. And I think that's going to be very disruptive overall, not only to a lot of the existing and dominant tech platforms, but also to brands and how they reach and engage their customers. So you kind of alluded to some of the Google announcements earlier, but I think Google just announced AI try-on and also AI shopping mode. And I think that these are really great examples, kind of what you're talking about. And they really point to a near future where consumers can explore products, narrow their consideration set in a way that is kind of much more contextual, much more personalized, and also much more visual. And I think that personalization to me is really interesting because for anyone who has worked in marketing, particularly in the fashion and beauty space over the past 5+ years, we've talked about personalization ad nauseum. And the reality is that most brands dramatically under-deliver on the promise of personalization. But AI is already and will continue to kind of transform that and make it a much more meaningful experience for the consumer. So that said, obviously what Google announced, it's very new. We're not sure what the adoption is going to be. And I do think, I don't know if you've had an opportunity to play with it, but there is a little friction right now in the experience. So you have to upload like a well-lit kind of full body photo to quote unquote try things on using AI. So I think that is definitely a barrier to entry. But at the same time, if I'm a high intent shopper and I'm incredibly interested, let's say in a dress from H&M, who's one of the pilot partners, then I certainly would take that step to avoid having to make a return.
Absolutely. Because I mean, returns are definitely a headache for the consumer and the companies that need to accept them back. It's interesting when we talk about AI and how we purchase, how we're going to purchase in this world of AI. And I was having a conversation with a friend of mine that works in PR, and she was talking about with all her clients, all the brands that she's working with, now they're like, okay, how do we optimize for AI search? How are we showing up in the LLMs? That's been interesting for me to watch and kind of see how are brands adapting to this when, I mean, SEO is a thing of the past. So you got to show up now in all these AI LLMs. And if you ask whichever LLM, like, what is the best beauty brand? Or who makes the best makeup? Or who makes the best lipstick? Or what's the best shade for me? I think that where you nailed it on the personalization, it stops being a buzzword. It starts being a reality, right?
Yeah. And I think it's really interesting that you bring up kind of the SEO versus the maybe AIO. I know some people are using that terminology. And on the AI front, I've definitely been talking to a lot of brands about this. And I find that they're often underestimating how discovery is changing and how quickly it's changing. So it isn't about optimizing for SEO anymore. SEO is rapidly diminishing in relevance. It's instead about structuring content so that AI can understand it and surface it contextually. And so ultimately, I think it's really important for brands that are thinking about this, whether it's a heritage brand or a disruptor, they really need to be reconsidering and prioritizing investments in, for example, branded editorial, ratings and reviews, top of funnel media, creator partnerships, not just for reach and engagement, but because all of that content, the volume of content, the authority of content, and the quality of it has an outsized impact AI search results.
Absolutely. And definitely seeing that. I think it's such an interesting moment to watch kind of how it's interesting because you mentioned like disruptors. I feel that we've never had this before for a long time. The disruptors and the brands that are willing to take a risk and truly understand where this is heading could really leapfrog the incumbents in a way that, I mean, before, no, because not everyone could afford those budgets for SEO, that sort of thing. But it's interesting to kind of watch, like, what's going to happen with some of these incumbents if they remain, and I'm just giving an example because I feel like in the beauty and fashion industry, there was a lot of resistance against e-commerce or things like that. Well, I'm sorry, but you cannot resist AI. I don't know if that says anything to you or you want to add anything there because I just find it interesting.
Yeah, I think one of the opportunities for incumbents, frankly, is really to build relationships with AI platforms and startups early. Not to say that younger, more emerging brands can't also do that, but in particular with some of these big platforms like a Google, they're going to prioritize the kind of marquee brands, the brands that are investing, for example, on platforms for partnerships. And those partnerships can be really powerful because they often offer, for example, subsidized pilots or white glove onboarding, which really kind of de-risks a lot of the experimentation. So that's something that I often talk about with some of the bigger brands that I'm kind of consulting with, like how can we really build and nurture those relationships?
Yeah, I think it's been more important than ever. It's not so much about throwing money into a SEO plan or whatever. It's really building those relationships and getting access to the newer models and newer services. So that makes sense. So you've advised a lot of like both heritage and emerging brands. What should they be prioritizing today to future-proof their marketing and commerce strategies? We talked about content, but what else can they do?
Yeah, I mean, I think whether you're at a heritage brand or an emerging brand, the fundamentals really haven't changed despite all of the disruption in the world. And I'm almost sorry to say this because we're kind of existing in a moment where the world is quite focused on growth marketing, in part due to all of kind of the macro factors in the economy. But the reality is that brands still matters. And I think that in an AI-powered world in particular, the brand only becomes more important as a differentiator. So that said, the playbook is definitely evolving. And we talked a little bit about how brands need to prioritize those investments in editorial, media, and creator. We also talked obviously about kind of partnering with platforms and with startups early to kind of test and learn as you go. But I think the reality is that we're likely to see kind of a winnowing of the field in fashion and beauty in the coming years. I think there are a lot of brands that simply won't survive. And there's even been a lot of media speculation, for example, around some of the large beauty conglomerates, how they might sort of refocus their portfolio to speak to today's customer. And I think the winning brands will really be the ones that can kind of merge creative excellence and brand consistency. That's something I believe in deeply, with ultimately technical fluency, so that technology isn't disrupting the experience, but it's ultimately something that is additive for the customer.
Yeah, because at the end of the day, it's funny because with all this AI craziness that we're in, at the end of the day, you're still selling to humans. You might sell through their agents eventually, right? It might be agent to agent commerce, but still at the end of the day, the makeup is for the human, at least for now. So I think that maybe sometimes in these technical conversations of sorts, in the silos that sometimes you and I fall, like we forget about that. At the end of the day, the person that's buying this is a human that needs to wear the makeup. So I feel like when you mentioned about like brand consistency and all those sorts of things, that's critical. You cannot forget those essentials. Even if you're doubling down on AI, at the end of the day, it's still a human that is using your product.
Agree.
So I think it's interesting. We had Tom Emmerich, my friend Tom Emmerich, who wrote a really good book called The Next Dimension here. And he said that one of the newer P's, let's say, for marketing is presence, being present. And like, there's a lot of technology, right, that's about to come at us. That's going to bring AI in different ways, embodied AI, or ways that computing and AI are going to be more present in our lives. What do you think about that? And I definitely want to talk a little bit more about the future, but what do you think about the concept of presence when we're talking about the future of beauty and fashion specifically?
Yeah, I think that's really interesting. I think ultimately what we're getting at, and perhaps what Tom was getting at, is really about a degree of emotional connectivity. And I think when brands lean too heavily into technology, for example, maybe in a retail experience or online, they can lose a little bit of that emotional connectivity. So I think that really, like, the goal here is to kind of move beyond the transaction in commerce and really to create moments that do feel, yes, personalized, yes, contextual, but also emotional, immersive, culturally resonant.
Definitely. I want to talk about the future because we're getting towards the end of the interview. And obviously, as a futurist, we must talk about the future. But what are you most excited about when it comes to the future? And what kinds of opportunities are you looking to explore when it comes to this future that we're heading into?
That's a big, broad question. I mean, it's kind of everything that we've talked about. Like personally, both as a marketer and as a consumer who deeply loves both fashion and beauty, I am really most excited about how technology can enable what are ultimately more human, personalized, and expressive brand experiences. And I think that applications like AI-powered styling or AI-powered try-on, or even, we touched a little bit on Roblox in this conversation, but identity-driven engagement in more immersive spaces like Roblox. It all indicates that we're entering an era where the consumer is much more participatory with the brand. And I think you and I have both spoken to one another and to other people about the rise in participation and also co-creation. So that's something that I still believe in deeply. And I think that the brands that will not only survive, but thrive are brands that will need to embrace that relationship with the customer.
I've got another question for you about the future. So obviously over the last 2 days, I feel like we've had so much hardware announcements. So Google coming back with glasses, right? Google Glass, big fail, but now Google XR, like they're bringing back glasses. There's announcements that Apple's going to bring glasses in 26. Meta's already said they're working on glasses. Like, I feel like everyone's talking about glasses.
Johnny Ive and ChatGPT.
ChatGPT, right? OpenAI buying Johnny Ive's company to create whatever it is that they're going to be creating that might not be glasses. When it comes to fashion and beauty, because that's the big question. It's like, would people really want to put glasses on? How do you think that's going to transfer into the fashion and beauty industry? Because at the end of the day, it is a fashion and beauty play Because if you put an accessory on, it's got to look good. So, I mean, I'm sure you've given this some thought. Like, it depends on what you would put on. I mean, I've got an Apple Vision Pro right there. No one's going to wear that out. Like, let's be honest. That was just for videos in New York City that people did that. No one's going to wear that. But what is it going to take for us to be like, okay, I'm not going to use my phone. I'm going to wear something on my face or on my body?
Yes. Can I ask personally, is there a piece of wearable technology that you wear every day?
No, I do not. I don't have an Oura Ring. I mean, I guess I would wear an Oura Ring. I think that's the closest I would get to every day. Other than my AirPods, which we are getting AirPods with cameras. Other than my AirPods, is there like a wearable? And I'm going to call it a wearable. It's a peripheral, but whatever. Other than that, like my phone's like my go-to. But I don't wear anything. Like I don't have an Apple Watch. No.
Yes. So I'm going to date myself here a little bit and admit that I worked with Diana von Furstenberg when Google Glass went down the New York Fashion Week runway.
That was a good moment, though. I mean, yeah, we didn't know what was going to happen with Google Glass.
It was a newsworthy moment. That's what I will say. But I think the problem with wearable technology has always been that it prioritizes function over form. And I think it ultimately shows just a fundamental misunderstanding of why people buy fashion. And I think you and I are both style conscious women in our own ways. And so I think that Meta, frankly, has hit a relative home run with the partnership that they have with Ray-Ban. I personally have a pair of the smart glasses, and I think that it's a beautiful product. And I think one of the things that they obviously did very well is that they partnered with a really iconic maker who has styles that people already identify with closely. So yeah, I mean, I'm curious to see where a brilliant product designer like Johnny Ive can take this. My goodness, he already transformed consumer behavior multiple times over in his work at Apple. So I think that's really what we're looking at, though, is kind of like a longer term shift in consumer behavior. It's my belief that it either has to be product that, again, allows for a degree of individual expression, or it has to be so discreet that you wouldn't even recognize it as wearable technology. And then the function has to be there too. And that's where some of the early startups in the space, whether it's the Rabbit or the Humane Pen, I think have kind of failed in that, number one, the design just kind of wasn't there. It was too obtrusive, too obvious. And then also the functionality wasn't there. They launched with what I would consider to truly be a minimum viable product, but that's not how you drive adoption. So yeah, I mean, I don't have like a good, concise answer for you, but it's something that I probably think about as much as you do because I have been invested in the wearable technology space for so long as an individual.
Yeah. So maybe in 5 years, we're going to do this and we're going to be wearing whatever device it is that Johnny Ives brings to us, right? Or whoever wins that race, and we'll be in hologram form. I don't know. We'll have to see. Right? I don't know. I don't know what's all going to look like, or we might just be robots, but whatever. I don't know, Dina. We'll have to see what happens with us. But anyway, Dina, where can folks find you?
Sure. You can find me online. My handle is Dina Fierro cross-platform. I know that can be tricky to spell, but I'm sure it will be in the show notes. And then I'm also launching my own podcast very soon called Origins of Influence, which digs into the very beginnings of the creator economy and offers applicable learnings for marketers and for earlier stage creators. So I will look forward to introducing that.
Fantastic. Well, great. I'm really excited to listen to it when it comes out. And Dina, this has been a delight. We'll probably have you back. Once we hear from Apple or whoever, like whatever else they drop, and there's like a fashion like side here, let's have you back to talk about, are people actually going to wear this? Right?
I would love it. Let me be your fashion and beauty correspondent or your editor at large, Cathy.
Let's do that. Well, thanks for being on the pod, Dina.
This was wonderful. Thank you.
All right. So that was a great interview. I mean, it was so interesting that Dina and I got to talk about Roblox and how Roblox is implementing real, like physical world commerce, right? Because that's something you and I had talked about a long time, and conversations that we even had with, with Roblox and Walmart a long time ago.
Yes. It's an area that has proven to have staying power. I think as soon as we saw digital items become something that people were willing to purchase and invest, it just kind of made sense that this is kind of the next iteration. I'm old enough to remember when humanity finally got to a point where we trusted buying and ordering things offline. But there was like 5 years there when like Amazon first came out and they were selling books and eBay was kind of like your local garage sale, you would think about buying something, but a lot of people wouldn't do it. And then it became like the norm. This, I feel like, is just kind of the next step.
Well, and talk about gaming. Guess what I'm downloading on my phone? I was waiting for us to be on the pod.
Oh, no.
I have
Okay.
Fortnite finally on my iPhone. Yes. Thank you, the legal system. I'm so happy.
Okay, so here's a question for you. Let's take it back to the story that just broke.
Okay.
Is Fortnite social media?
Yes, to me it is.
Yes, to you it is. Okay, that has yet to be determined in Texas because Texas just
Good point.
pushed a new law.
Yeah.
They're moving forward with a social media ban for minors. This is going to spark a whole new debate in this area. The legislation would require all social media platforms. This is tough. I want to say this a second time so our listeners really hear exactly what I'm saying. The legislation would require all social media platforms to verify the ages of all people setting up accounts. It would allow parents to request that the platform delete their children's social media accounts and require the companies to do so as well within 10 days. But if this goes into effect, everyone in Texas, when they set up a social media account, will have to verify who they are.
Well, that's kind of good.
I know at least one major social media platform in Texas who might not agree.
But why not like that? Yes. Anonymity is key, right? Interesting. Is it new accounts? Does it count for old accounts or is it just new accounts? I don't know, right?
I don't know. And this goes into the bigger question of like, how do social media platforms implement these type of splinter net laws between state lines?
Which is
very difficult.
Florida or something similar? I can't remember what. I don't know what other state.
And it's not rolled out because it does go back to how this conversation.
We're doing this, right?
The first question is Fortnite social media?
Probably not by the legal standard that this case is presenting. They're going to consider this gaming, right? To me, it is social media, but it's not traditional social media.
I've always struggled with the term social media.
Yeah, I don't even like the word social media, right?
It's a very strange...
Is it social network? Like what? Is it
I don't really know what it means.
Social experience platforms? I don't know.
Too malleable. I don't feel like... I don't know. And maybe we get a definition finally out of it.
Yeah.
But I can make an argument that email is social media.
That Slack is social media.
That Slack is social media. Like, where's the line? And I don't know if we have that answer yet. But as these states, and let me be very clear, this is not a political statement that we're making here.
Yeah.
This is a clarifying statement because I do believe that these type of approaches do come from a good place. I understand the desire of voters and constituents in these states saying, look, this is too much I don't want my kid on this. I mean, some of the stuff you get served unexpectedly on social media, I know I don't want any kids seeing this. Like, this has been a problem in the past and people are looking for a solution. I just don't know how you define it. That's kind of where it boils apart for me.
We'll have to see. But yeah, that kind of splinter net kind of, how do you enforce all these sorts of things? We'll have to see.
Right.
It will be interesting if the gaming companies get looped into this social media. Right, because to me they are, but then it's like you said, what's the definition of it? How do you define what a social media company is?
Right.
We'll have to see. That's interesting.
I don't know.
We'll have to see.
This one's funny. I love this story so much. I love this story on so many levels. Coffee.
I love coffee.
Okay. ChatGPT and divorce.
Yeah. I sent you that one, didn't I?
I don't know where this story came from. This is such a wild story.
Oh, people are doing crazy things when it comes to relationships and ChatGPT. Like our whole episode, we didn't talk about this coffee one in the episode we did about AI and dating, but yeah. Oh my
so
God.
The story is a woman divorced her husband after using ChatGPT to interpret the coffee grounds, which allegedly indicated infidelity.
I have a feeling there was other inklings of infidelity other than the coffee grounds, but girl, you go, girl.
Yes. I agree. But, okay, this is some Harry Potter level, like,
I know.
reading tea leaves nonsense.
My ChatGPT coffee ground divorce. Oh my God.
I would love to understand better the thought process that goes, I just finished my French press. I'm going to take a photo and upload it to ChatGPT to see what it says. Oh,
it's my husband being unfaithful. I'm sure that LLM is pulling from a lot of other messages that this woman was putting in for things, and it's making a conclusion based on what she wanted to hear. I don't know. This is what I think. This woman had already made up her mind. She wanted to divorce him. She wanted to divorce this man. She's just using the coffee grounds. I mean, it was just kind of like, it proved it.
Yeah, that did it. I mean, I know people like have used psychics and things like that in the past, and like
Are they out of? Oh my gosh, are they out of a job now?
Are psychics out of a job? Well, if they didn't see it coming.
That has to be the clip. That's gonna be the clip of this week. That's fantastic. I hope everyone's laughing in the car or wherever they're listening to this. But yeah, if they didn't see it coming, they're not great. Psychics. Good point. Good point. Yeah. Oh my gosh. Crazy, crazy stuff. So I think we've got time for one or two more, Lee.
Okay. You pick here.
Well, I wanted to do the Fortnite thing. We already talked about Fortnite. Right. I mean, Google I.O. had the Google XR glasses, Google Beam. Okay, Google Beam, which used to be Google's Project Starlight, which I did a demo of a couple years ago. I am so thrilled that this is actually coming. Like, it's now called Project Meme. And I don't know where they're launching it first. I can't remember the announcement because Google I.O. had so many different announcements.
They had a lot going on.
Their new video model, which is outrageously good. It's scarily good. But yeah, Google Beam is kind of like, it's almost like a portal for conversation in the sense that it's like 3D without a headset. So this is the experience. So when I did my demo, I walked into a room and I sat behind a desk in a chair, and there's these kind of like screens in front of me. There's these cameras. And then someone else shows up and sits in front of me. They're in a different room. They could be anywhere, but I could see them in 3D without a headset. And I could see so well, like I could see their skin so well. I could see the pores.
So it's really like a holodeck type of...
Holodeck, yeah. It feels like a holodeck. They had, I think it was an apple. It was some type of fruit. And I remember they're, like, if I do like this, you can just see my hand flat. Like I could see the apple in 3D. I wanted to grab the apple, right? I can't because it's an apple that they have in physical form. It would be virtual for me.
I feel like that was a jab at Apple.
Interesting. I never thought about that. Smart move, Google. But yeah. It was really, really powerful demo. One of the best demos that I've done that I was like blown away. Like, okay, they showed me something I had never seen. And they're using AI and the cameras to kind of like also make sure that the 3D is right and all these sorts of things. So Beam is coming. So I was excited about Google XR glasses, which they demoed again. I had seen that at the TED stage. Now they did it at Google I.O. Talked more about that.
And on the heels of that, Apple is announcing their smart glasses. Not all of them will have augmented reality. I actually like this. This is part of me wonders if this isn't chasing after Meta a little bit.
Of course it is.
You know what I mean?
It is. Yeah.
So 2 variants, one with AR capabilities, one without, different prices. What I'm not seeing yet is who's going to be making the glasses. I honestly think that's the most important part. And
they got to partner with someone good. They got to partner with someone good. Maybe Burberry. I mean, they've got a really good relationship with a lot, like, or well, not Hermes. Hermes would be too expensive and prohibitive. But who knows? Let's see. Oakley? I don't know. We'll see. What do you? Yeah.
I don't know. I honestly, Warby Parker for all I care.
When's WWDC? That's coming up pretty close.
That's soon.
June. That's early June.
Yeah.
Because it'll be 2 years from the announcement of the Vision Pro.
Yeah, and they've got a lot of ground to make up for on that too, because they didn't talk about it last year that much. They did a little bit, but that was almost all Apple Intelligence. So another year later, where are we standing?
The pressure's on, though. The pressure's on for hardware with Johnny Ive moving out. Like Johnny Ive, he had already left Apple, but doing this other stuff.
Yeah, going directly to OpenAI. It's a new
Google XR announcing and Meta coming into hardware hard, and so Samsung going into it too. Like I feel like the pressure's on. I feel like I have an inkling that we're going to have a lot more spatial computing announcements, or at least mentions, during the next WWDC. Just reading my coffee grounds.
Reading your coffee grounds.
Reading my coffee grounds here. That's what I foresee. So we'll have to see. We'll have to stay on track of WWDC.
Oh, wow. Well, to wrap us out, I have not been listening to any music because when I travel, I tend to read and do audiobooks because I'm in the car longer, or I'm just like actually reading. And I knocked out 2 amazing sci-fi novels. One was Blake Crouch's Upgrade. I also read Recursion. I read the whole trilogy that he kind of put out, in ending with Dark Matter.
Yes.
It's not a trilogy. They're not related. He's just made 3 really great sci-fi novels. So I read 3 of those. Those I highly suggest. Out of the 3, Recursion. No one seems to talk about this one. It's a little bit harder to read, but it's so good. It is very, very good. And before I saw the movie, I haven't seen the movie yet, I wanted to read Mickey 7. So I read Mickey 7 as a novel, and I'm currently diving into a book called Babel. Mickey 7 was, I think, really good.
Yeah.
After reading the book, I almost am am not interested in watching the movie because I feel like I know it so well. But I do like to go back and see some of these films because I like to see how they've been adapted to the screen. Mm-hmm. So yeah, those are my suggestions for right now instead of music. I don't know if you've dove into anything interesting.
I'm reading a really fantastic book from a wonderful man that I met recently called Matthew Cronin. He's a professor at George Mason. And he wrote this book. It's a couple years old, but still very relevant, I think, especially now in the age of AI. So it's called The Craft of Creativity. And Professor Cronin and Jeffrey Lowenstein, I guess that's to pronounce his last name, for his co-author wrote it. And it's really about changing your perspective and what creativity is and isn't. And it's really pushing my brain in an interesting way, especially in this day and age.
Yeah.
With AI, where people were like, oh no, it's going to steal, AI is going to take creativity away. I'm like, well, not necessarily. Depends on how you define it. So highly recommend this book.
I think uncreative people say that.
Uncreative people. There you go. Or people that feel threatened, maybe? I don't know.
Maybe because AI pulls from history and creativity pulls from tomorrow. So that's what we need to keep an eye on.
So thank you, Dr. Cronin, for the book. I'm really enjoying it.
That sounds excellent. And we are planning on being at AWE in June. That's coming up really soon. We will be hosting one of our shows from there. Got a great lineup of people who we're going to be able to interview while we're there. So be looking out for that in June. May is wrapped. This is shocking.
Yeah, June's going to be busy for me. June, we're recording next Sunday because I have to leave for Chile on the Monday we normally record because I'm going there for Singularity University Summit Chile. So giving a talk there on everything spatial computing, on-device AI, the future of glasses, all this stuff. And then actually I'm going to the Atacama Desert for a couple of days, which is the driest place on Earth and one of the best places for stargazing. And everyone that has gone has told me it looks like Mars. So let's see what happens. I'm excited.
Take some photos.
Oh, I will. And then heading straight from there to AWE.
And I will tell you, the iPhone does take amazing star photos. So I think you'll have a good time with that.
That's a good point. I should totally do that. Maybe I should also shoot some spatial video.
Yep, you should absolutely do that. Anyways, thanks for tuning into Tech Magic, where we always invite you to come for the tech, stay for the magic. I'm Lee Kebler here with the incredible Cathy Hackl. Special thanks as always to Adweek for bringing this show to you. If you'd enjoyed today's episode, please leave us a review and let us know your thoughts. We'd love to connect with you. Just search for Tech Magic, Cathy Hackl, or me, Lee Kebler. You'll find us. We'll be back next week.
Blowing ad budget on metrics that look great till the CFO sees them? That's bull spend. And marketers are calling it out in Dashboard Confessions.
I remember telling my boss, it'll be good for the brand, when leads were slow. Yeah, it wasn't.
Cut the bull spend. LinkedIn lets you target by company, job title, and more. Advertise on LinkedIn. Spend $250 on your first campaign and get a $250 credit. Go to linkedin.com/campaign. Terms and conditions apply.
Ryan Reynolds here from Mint Mobile with a message for everyone paying big wireless way too much. Please, for the love of everything good in this world, stop. With Mint, you can get premium wireless for just $15 a month. Of course, if you enjoy overpaying, no judgments, but that's weird. Okay, one judgment. Anyway, give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch.
Upfront payment of $45 for 3-month plan, equivalent to $15 per month required. Intro rate first 3 months only, then full price plan options available. Taxes and fees extra. See full terms at mintmobile.com.